The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. Park Do-yun walked through the muddy mountain path with his old sword hanging at his side. His clothes were wet. His boots were falling apart. He had not eaten a proper meal in 2 days. But none of this was new to him. This was his life. This had always been his life. Do-hyun was a mercenary. He took small jobs in villages, guarding caravans, chasing away bandits, sometimes hunting wild animals that troubled farmers. He never stayed in one place for long. He had no family waiting for him anywhere. He had no friends who would notice if he disappeared. He was 32 years old and he had been alone since he was 16. The mountain path was leading him toward a small town called Hadong. He had heard there was work there. A merchant needed guards for a trip to the southern coast. It was simple work, easy money, enough to buy food and maybe fix his boots. The rain grew heavier. Do-yun pulled his worn cloak tighter around his shoulders. The trees on both sides of the path were thick and dark. The sound of rain hitting leaves filled the air. Then he heard something else. A scream, high and sharp, the voice of a child. Do-yun stopped walking. He listened carefully. The scream came again, followed by rough voices shouting. It was coming from somewhere below the path, down in a ravine hidden by trees and rocks. Most mercenaries would ignore such sounds. Getting involved in unknown trouble was a good way to die young. Do-yun knew this better than anyone. He had survived this long by minding his own business. But something about that scream made his chest tight. It reminded him of another voice, another time. A memory he had tried to bury for 16 years. He left the path and moved down the slope. The wet rocks were slippery under his broken boots. He grabbed tree branches to keep his balance. The shouting grew louder as he got closer. When Do-yun reached the bottom of the ravine, he saw them. 5 men wearing black masks stood in a half circle. They carried weapons, 2 with swords, 2 with spears, 1 with a heavy net. They were hunters of some kind, but not the kind who hunted animals. In the center of their circle, pressed against a large rock, was a child. But this was no ordinary child. The girl looked about 8 or 9 years old. She had long silver hair that seemed to glow even in the gray rain. Her skin was pale like moonlight, and her eyes were gold, pure gold, like melted metal. One scales of the same silver as her hair covered parts of her arms and neck. She was shaking with fear, tears mixing with rain on her face. "Finally caught you," one of the masked men said. "Do you know how much the collectors will pay for a dragon child? More gold than we could spend in 10 lifetimes. "Please," the girl said. Her voice was small and broken. "Please let me go. I want my father. I want to go home." "Your home is far away, little monster," another hunter laughed, "and your father cannot reach you here. This side of the veil belongs to humans. You should never have crossed over." Do-yun did not understand what they meant by the veil or why this child had scales and golden eyes. But he understood enough. 5 grown men were hunting a frightened child like she was an animal. They wanted to sell her. They would hurt her. The girl's golden eyes suddenly looked past the hunters. She saw Do-hyun standing at the edge of the ravine. Hope and fear mixed in her face. The hunters noticed her gaze and turned around. "Who are you?" the leader demanded. "Walk away, stranger. This is not your concern." Do-hyun looked at the child. She was so small, so scared. In his mind, he saw another face, his little sister, Yoonji. She had been 8 years old when the soldiers came to their village. Do-hyun had hidden in the forest like a coward. He had heard her screaming. He had done nothing. When he finally came out, the village was burned and everyone was dead. 16 years of guilt. 16 years of running from that memory. 16 years of being nobody, helping nobody, caring about nothing. "I said walk away," the hunter shouted. Do-hyun drew his old sword. The blade was dull and chipped, but it was still a weapon. "Let the child go," he said. His voice was calm. He was surprised by how calm he felt. The hunters looked at each other. Then they laughed. "1 man with a rusty sword against 5 of us?" the leader said. "You must be tired of living." "Maybe I am," Do-hyun replied. "But that child is leaving this ravine. I do not care what she is. I do not care who you are. She is a child and you will not touch her." The hunters stopped laughing. They saw something in Do-hyun's eyes, something that made them uneasy. This was not a hero trying to be brave. This was a man who had already accepted death. "Kill him," the leader ordered. The first hunter charged with his sword raised. Doyun stepped to the side and cut across the man's arm. The hunter screamed and dropped his weapon. But Dohyun had no time to feel proud. A spear came at him from the right. He twisted his body, but the blade still cut his shoulder. Blood soaked his already wet shirt. The second swordsman attacked from the left. Dohyun blocked the strike, but the impact made his arms shake. These men were strong. They were trained, and there were too many of them. A spear pierced his leg. Dohyun fell to one knee. He kept his sword up, blocking another strike. The leader stepped forward and drove his blade into Dohyun's side. The pain was blinding. Dohyun gasped, but did not fall. "Why do you not die?" the leader growled. Dohyun grabbed the man's wrist and pulled him close. With his last strength, he drove his sword into the hunter's stomach. The leader's eyes went wide. He stumbled backward, clutching his wound, but the other hunters did not stop. Another blade found Dohyun's back, then another in his chest. He counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blades in his body. His vision was going dark. His legs could no longer hold him. Dohyun fell onto the wet ground. Rain fell on his face. Blood pooled around him. He could hear the hunters cursing and arguing. Someone was dying. The leader, probably. Maybe others were wounded too, but none of that mattered. Dohyun turned his head with great effort. He saw the silver-haired child. She was still against the rock, but she was no longer crying. She was looking at him with those golden eyes. In her small hands, something was glowing. Bright light. Warm light. "Thank you," her voice echoed in his fading mind. "You saved me. Now I will save you." The light grew brighter. The pain started to fade. Dohyun wanted to tell her to run, to escape while the hunters were distracted. But he could not speak. He could only close his eyes. The last thing he heard was the sound of wings, great wings beating against the rain. Then everything went silent, and Park Do-hyun fell into darkness. He thought it was the end. He thought he would finally see Yoonji again. He thought his story was over. He was wrong. His story was only beginning. Park Do-hyun opened his eyes slowly. For a long moment, he did not move. He just stared at the ceiling above him. It was made of something that looked like black glass, but soft light moved inside it like captured stars. He had never seen anything like it. He was lying on a bed. The sheets beneath him were softer than anything he had ever touched. They felt like water and silk combined. He tried to sit up and was surprised when his body obeyed. There was no pain. He remembered the blades, 5 blades piercing his flesh. He remembered dying. Do-hyun looked down at his bare chest. Where the wounds should have been, there were only scars. Silver scars that seemed to catch the light and glow faintly. He touched them with trembling fingers. The skin was smooth, healed, as if the wounds had happened years ago, not hours ago. He looked around the room. It was large and beautiful in a way that made no sense. The walls curved like the inside of a shell. Windows showed a sky he did not recognize, deep purple with 2 moons hanging low. Furniture made of dark wood and white stone filled the space. Everything felt ancient and powerful. Where was he? What had happened? Was he dead? Was this the afterlife? A door opened. Not a door of wood or metal, but a door of light that appeared in the wall and then faded away. A woman walked through. She looked human, mostly. She was tall and graceful, with long black hair that fell past her waist. Her skin had a faint golden tone, and her eyes were deep amber. She wore robes of shimmering blue and silver that moved like living water. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was gentle but carried weight. "We were not sure you would survive, even with our healing." Do-hyun tried to speak, but his throat was dry. The woman raised her hand, and a cup of water floated from a table to his bedside. He stared at it. "Drink," she said. "Your body needs it." He took the cup and drank deeply. The water was cool and tasted sweet, like mountain springs after winter snow. Strength slowly returned to his limbs. "Who are you?" Do-hyun finally asked. "Where am I?" The woman sat in a chair beside his bed. Her movements were smooth, almost like flowing liquid. "My name is Yuna," she said. "I am a healer in the House of the Dragon King. You are in the Dragon Kingdoms, in the palace of our ruler. You were brought here through the veil after what you did in the ravine. Doyun shook his head. None of this made sense. Dragon Kingdoms? The veil? I do not understand. Yuna nodded patiently. I will explain. The world you know is only one side of reality. There is another side, a realm where the ancient races live. Dragons, spirits, beings that humans call myths and legends. A barrier called the veil separates the two worlds. Most humans never see our side. Most beings here never cross to yours. She paused to let him absorb her words. The child you saved is called Isul. She is the youngest daughter of our Dragon King. She crossed the veil without permission. Children are curious, and she wanted to see the human world. But those hunters were waiting. They had traps and spells designed to catch young dragons who wander too far. Do-hyun remembered the silver-haired girl, her golden eyes, her scales. She is a dragon? He asked. Yes, dragons can take human form when they wish. Isul is still young, so her control is not perfect. Her scales showed when she was frightened. Yuna's eyes softened. She would have been captured and sold. In the human world, there are collectors who pay fortunes for dragon children. They keep them in cages, use them for their blood and scales. It is a fate worse than death. A cold anger stirred in Do-hyun's chest. He thought of those masked hunters. He hoped he had killed more than just their leader. You stepped in front of 5 armed hunters for a child you did not know, Yuna continued. A child who was not even human. You took 5 blades meant for her. Do you know how rare that is? Humans usually fear what they do not understand. They hate what is different. But you protected Isul without hesitation. She was scared, Do-hyun said simply. She was just a child. Yuna smiled. It was a beautiful smile, warm and genuine. That is exactly what Isul told her father. She said the human man did not care that she was a dragon. He only saw that she was afraid. She begged us to save you. The light, Do-hyun remembered. She made some kind of light. Isul used her own life energy to keep you alive until help arrived. It was dangerous for one so young. She could have died. But she refused to let you go. Yuna reached out and touched one of Do-hyun's silver scars. Your wounds were healed with dragon magic. The scars you carry now are not ordinary marks. Dragon energy is bonded to your flesh. You are still human, but you have been touched by something greater. Do-hyun looked at his scars again. They seemed to pulse with faint light under Yuna's touch. How long have I been asleep? He asked. 7 days. 7 days, it felt like only moments. A new door of light appeared in the wall. This time a small figure rushed through. It was Isul. She looked different now, clean and wearing a beautiful white dress with silver patterns. But her golden eyes were the same. When she saw Do-hyun sitting up, her face broke into the biggest smile. You are awake, she cried. She ran to his bed and stopped just short of jumping onto it. Suddenly she looked shy. I was so worried. I visited every day. Yuna said you needed rest, but I was scared you would not wake up. Do-hyun did not know what to say. This child had saved him. A dragon princess had used her own life force to save a worthless human mercenary. Thank you, he said quietly. For saving me. Isul shook her head quickly. No, you saved me first. Those bad men were going to take me away. I was so scared. Then you came. You were hurt so badly, and it was all because of me. Tears started to form in her golden eyes. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Before Do-hyun could respond, Isul threw herself forward and hugged him. He froze. He could not remember the last time anyone had hugged him. Slowly, awkwardly, he put one hand on her head. It is okay, he said. I made my own choice. You do not need to apologize. Yuna watched them with a gentle expression. Isul, she said softly, your father wishes to meet our guest. Perhaps you should let him rest a little more before the audience. Isul pulled back and wiped her eyes. Father wants to meet him. Really? The Dragon King always meets those who protect his family. Do-hyun felt a chill. Meeting a Dragon King, the ruler of an entire realm. He was a broken mercenary who could not even afford new boots. What was he supposed to say to a king? Do not worry, Isul said, as if reading his mind. Father seems scary, but he is really kind. He will like you. I know he will. She gave him another quick smile and then ran out of the room, disappearing through a door of light. Yuna stood. I will bring you clothes suitable for the audience. The Dragon King does not like to wait, but he understands you have been through much. Take whatever time you need to prepare yourself. She moved toward the wall, but Doyun stopped her with a question. Yuna, why did you save me? I am just a human. I am nobody. Why go through all this trouble? Yuna turned back. Her amber eyes held something Doyun could not name. You are wrong, she said. You are not nobody. A nobody does not throw away his life for a stranger. A nobody does not stand against impossible odds without hesitation. She paused. In the Dragon Kingdoms, we have a saying. The size of a soul is not measured by power or wealth. It is measured by what you are willing to sacrifice for others. By that measure, Park Do-yun, your soul is very large indeed. She left through the door of light, leaving Do-hyun alone with his thoughts. He looked out the window at the purple sky and twin moons. Somewhere out there was a world he did not understand, filled with creatures from legends. And somehow a wandering mercenary with nothing to his name had ended up in the middle of it all. He touched his silver scars again. They were warm under his fingers. Whatever happened next, Do-hyun knew one thing for certain. His old life was over. Whether that was a blessing or a curse, he had not yet decided. The throne room of the Dragon King was the largest space Do-hyun had ever seen. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually drifted through it. Pillars of black stone lined both sides, each one carved with images of dragons in flight. The floor was polished white marble that reflected everything like still water. Do-hyun walked forward slowly. Yuna had given him new clothes, a simple gray robe with silver edges. It was plain compared to everything else in this place, but it was the finest thing he had ever worn. His feet were bare. Apparently, shoes were not worn before the Dragon King. At the end of the great hall sat a throne made of something that looked like frozen fire. It burned with cold light but produced no heat. And on that throne sat a figure that made Do-hyun's heart stop. The Dragon King was in human form, but there was nothing ordinary about him. He was tall, perhaps 7 feet, with broad shoulders and a powerful build. His hair was white like his daughter's, but streaked with gold. His skin had a faint pattern of scales visible at his neck and hands. His eyes were the same golden color as his soul's, but ancient. So ancient. They held the weight of thousands of years. When those eyes fell on Do-hyun, he felt like an insect before a mountain. Come closer, the Dragon King commanded. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder in a distant valley. Do-hyun walked until he was 30 feet from the throne. Then he dropped to his knees. He did not know the proper way to greet a Dragon King, but kneeling seemed appropriate. You may rise, the king said. Do-hyun stood, but he kept his eyes lowered. Looking directly at the king felt dangerous. Look at me, human. Do-hyun raised his head and met the king's gaze. Something shifted in those golden eyes. Interest, perhaps, or curiosity. I am called Hwanryong, the king said. I have ruled these lands for 4,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched humans build cities and burn them down. In all that time, I have met only a handful of your kind who were worthy of my attention. He leaned forward slightly. My daughter tells me you saved her life. She tells me you threw yourself between her and 5 armed hunters. She tells me you took their blades without hesitation, even though you knew you would die. The king's eyes narrowed. Is this true? Yes, my king, Do-hyun said. His voice was steady despite his fear. I saw a frightened child. I could not walk away. You did not know she was a dragon? No, I only knew she was scared. Would it have mattered if you knew? Do-hyun considered the question carefully. No, he said finally. I do not think it would have mattered. The Dragon King was silent for a long moment. The hall was so quiet that Do-hyun could hear his own heartbeat. Fascinating, Hwanryong said at last. Most humans fear what is different from them. They would have joined the hunters, not fought them. Yet you saw only a child in need. I used to have a sister, Do-hyun said quietly. She was killed when I was young. I could not save her. I have carried that failure my whole life. He paused. When I saw your daughter's eyes, I saw my sister's fear. I could not fail again. Something changed in the king's expression. The ancient coldness softened just slightly. You speak honestly. That is rare among any race. Huanyong stood from his throne. Even from 30 feet away, Dohyun felt the power radiating from him. In the Dragon Kingdoms, we have laws older than human civilization. One of those laws concerns debts. When someone saves the life of a dragon, especially a child of royal blood, a debt is created. This debt is sacred. It cannot be ignored. He descended the steps slowly. My daughter Isolde owes you her life. By extension, I owe you her life. This debt must be honored. Dohyun did not know what to say. He had not saved the girl expecting any reward. I offer you a choice, the king continued. The first option is treasure. Gold, jewels, artifacts of power. I will give you enough wealth to live as a king in your own world. You can return through the veil and never think of us again. Treasure. More gold than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. Doyon could buy a house, land. He would never be hungry again. He would never have to sleep in rain-soaked forests or take dangerous jobs just to survive. The second option, Huanrying said, is to stay. He stopped walking. He was now only 10 feet from Dohyun. In the Dragon Kingdoms, we have an order of warriors called the Yongho. They are our greatest protectors. They guard the royal family. They defend our borders. They are the finest fighters in all the realms. The king studied Dohyun's face. I am offering you a place among them. Dohyun's mind went blank. The Yongho, greatest protectors. He was a broken mercenary with no special skills. How could he possibly belong among legendary warriors? The dragon magic in your scars has changed you, Huanyong explained. You are still human, but you are no longer ordinary. With training, you could become something remarkable. The Yongho have not accepted a human in over 200 years, but I am willing to make an exception. Why? Dohyun asked. The word escaped before he could stop it. The Dragon King's eyes flickered. Because you showed something rare. Not courage. Many beings have courage. What you showed was compassion without condition. You protected my daughter without knowing what she was, without expecting reward, without caring about your own survival. That kind of heart cannot be taught. It can only be born. He turned and walked back toward his throne. You do not need to decide immediately. Take time to think. Walk our lands. See what the Dragon Kingdoms have to offer. But know this, whatever you choose, you will have my respect. Saving a soul has earned you that much at least. The audience was clearly over. Dohyun bowed deeply. Thank you, King Huanryong. I will consider your offer carefully. He was escorted out of the throne room by 2 guards in silver armor. They led him through corridors of impossible beauty, gardens that grew upside down, fountains that flowed upward, windows showing views of landscapes that could not exist. Eventually, they reached a balcony overlooking the kingdom below. Dohyun stood at the railing and looked out. The Dragon Kingdom was beautiful beyond words. Cities of crystal and stone spread across valleys and mountains. Rivers of light flowed between them. Great dragons flew through the purple sky, their scales catching the twin moon's glow. It was like a dream he never wanted to wake from. Do you like it? Dohyun turned. Isolde had appeared beside him, her golden eyes bright with hope. It is amazing, he said truthfully. Father told me about the choice he gave you. She looked down at her hands. I hope you will stay. I know it is selfish, but I want you to stay. Why? Dohyun asked. Isolde looked up at him. Because you feel safe, she said simply. When those bad men surrounded me, I was so scared. I thought I was going to die. Then you came. You were just a human with a broken sword, but you were not afraid. You stood in front of me like a wall, like nothing could get past you. She smiled softly. I have guards and soldiers everywhere, but none of them make me feel as safe as you did. Dohyun felt something crack inside his chest, a wall he had built long ago, made of guilt and loneliness and pain. Isolde's words were like light shining through that crack. I do not know if I can be a Yongho, he said honestly. I am not strong. I have no magic. I am just a wanderer who got lucky. Isolde shook her head firmly. You are not lucky. You are brave, brave and kind. That is better than strong. That is better than magic. She reached out and touched one of the silver scars visible at his collar. These marks mean you belong here now. The dragons have claimed you. Do-yun thought about his life in the human world. The loneliness, the emptiness, the constant running from a past he could never escape. What did he have to go back to? A few coins? Another dangerous job? Another night sleeping under a cold sky? Here in this impossible kingdom, a little girl looked at him like he mattered. A king had offered him purpose. Magic flowed through his scars. He was nobody in the human world. But maybe, just maybe, he could become someone here. I think, Do-yun said slowly, I will stay. Isol's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. She grabbed his hand and squeezed it tightly. Really? You mean it? Yes. For the first time in 16 years, Do-yun smiled. I think I would like to try being a protector. Isol laughed with pure joy. The sound echoed across the balcony and out into the endless sky. Do-yun watched the dragons flying in the distance. He did not know what the future held. He did not know if he could survive the training or earn his place among the Yongho. But for the first time in his life, he had something to fight for. And that, he realized, made all the difference. The training grounds of the Yongho were built on a floating island above the main palace. Do-yun had to climb 3,000 steps carved into the mountain just to reach the bridge that connected to it. By the time he arrived on the first day, his legs were shaking and his lungs were burning. Commander Taewon was waiting for him. The commander was a dragon in human form, like most of the royal guards. He stood over 6 feet tall, with silver hair cut short and eyes like polished steel. His face looked carved from stone. Hard angles, no softness, no warmth. Scars covered his arms and neck, each one a mark of battles survived. So you are the human, Taewon said. His voice was flat without emotion. The one who saved the princess. Yes, Commander, Do-yun bowed respectfully. Saving a child does not make you a warrior. Taewon walked in a slow circle around Do-hyun, studying him like a butcher studies meat. It makes you lucky. The Yongho are not built on luck. We are built on discipline, skill, and absolute dedication. Many have tried to join us. Most have failed. He stopped in front of Do-yun. You are weak. You are slow. You have no magic of your own. The dragon energy in your scars gives you some advantage, but it is raw and untrained. You are starting further behind than any recruit I have ever seen. Do-yun said nothing. Everything the commander said was true. I told the king you would fail, Taewon continued. I told him bringing a human here was a waste of time, but he insisted. He believes you have something special. The commander's eyes narrowed. I do not see it. He stepped back and raised his voice. You will train every day from sunrise to sunset. You will learn our combat forms, our movement techniques, our defensive strategies. You will be tested constantly, and if you fall behind, if you give up, if you show any weakness, you will be sent back to your world. Am I clear? Yes, Commander. Good. Now run the perimeter of this island. 10 times, go. Do-yun ran. The island was larger than it looked from below. By the 3rd lap, his body was screaming. By the 5th, he was sure he would collapse. But he kept going. He thought of Isol's smile. He thought of the king's words. He thought of the life he had left behind. He completed 10 laps and fell to his knees, gasping for air. Taewon stood over him. Pathetic, the commander said. Again, 10 more. The first month was the hardest time of Do-hyun's life. Every muscle in his body ached constantly. He learned sword forms until his arms felt like they would fall off. He practiced defensive stances until his legs gave out. He was knocked down hundreds of times by the other Yongho during sparring sessions. The other warriors watched him with cold eyes. They did not speak to him. They did not help him when he struggled. To them, he was an outsider, a human who did not belong. He will not last another week, Do-yun heard one warrior say to another. The commander should have refused. Humans are too fragile. He is only here because of the princess. Once he fails, things will return to normal. Do-yun pretended not to hear. He focused on training. He woke before sunrise and practiced alone in the dark. He stayed after everyone else had gone to sleep, repeating movements until his body memorized them. The dragon energy in his scars began to respond. During intense moments, the silver lines would glow faintly. He could feel power flowing through them, but he did not know how to control it. It was like having a fire inside his chest that he could not direct. Yuna visited him sometimes in the medical hall. His injuries were frequent. Broken ribs, torn muscles, cuts that needed stitching. She healed him with gentle magic and kind words. "You are pushing yourself too hard," she said one evening, mending a deep cut on his arm. "Even dragons need rest." "I do not have time to rest," Do-Yun replied. Commander Taewon was right. "I am weak, I am slow. The only way I can catch up is to work harder than everyone else." Yuna shook her head sadly. "You are too harsh on yourself. I have been too easy on myself for 16 years. It is time for that to change." But the brightest moments came when Isil visited. She would sneak away from her tutors and appear at the training grounds with food and water. The other warriors always grew uncomfortable when she arrived. She was royalty after all, but she only had eyes for Do-Hyun. "I brought rice cakes," she announced one afternoon, holding up a small basket. "Cook made them fresh this morning." Do-Hyun was sitting against a wall, exhausted from a brutal sparring session. His lip was split and his ribs were bruised, but he smiled when he saw her. "You should not be here, princess. Your father would not approve." "Father knows I come here." She sat beside him and offered a rice cake. "He thinks it is good for me to see the training. He says it will help me understand what the Yongho sacrificed to protect us." Do-Yun took the rice cake. It was sweet and soft, perfect after a hard day. "How is your training going?" Isul asked. "Badly." There was no point in lying. "I am the weakest one here. The other warriors think I do not belong." Isul's golden eyes flashed with anger. "They are wrong. You belong here more than anyone. You proved it when you saved me. Saving one child does not make me a warrior." "No," Isul agreed. "But not giving up makes you one. I watch you sometimes from the palace windows. I see you training alone at night when everyone else is sleeping. I see you getting knocked down and standing back up. I see you falling and trying again." She put her small hand on his arm. "That is what a warrior does. That is what the Yongho are supposed to be." Do-Yun looked at her. This strange dragon child who believed in him so completely. "Why do you have such faith in me?" he asked. Isolde tilted her head, thinking. "Because you are honest," she said finally. "You do not pretend to be strong when you are weak. You do not make excuses. You just try your best. I think that is more impressive than being powerful." She pulled a small cloth from her pocket. Inside was a healing salve that glowed with soft light. "I made this myself," she said proudly. "Well, Yuna helped, but I did most of it. Put it on your bruises tonight. It will help them heal faster." Do-Yun took the salve carefully. It was warm in his hand. "Thank you, Isul." She smiled and jumped to her feet. "I have to go before my tutors find out I skipped my lessons. But I will come back tomorrow, and the day after, and every day until you become a real Yongho." She started to run away, then stopped and looked back. "Do not give up, Do-Hyun. You promised you would become a protector. I am holding you to that promise." Then she was gone, a flash of silver hair disappearing around a corner. That night, Do-Hyun applied the salve to his injuries. The next morning, the bruises were nearly gone, and when he returned to training, something was different. Commander Taewon threw him harder than usual during their sparring match. Do-Hyun hit the ground and felt anger rise in his chest. The silver scars on his body suddenly blazed with light. Power surged through him, not his own power, but the dragon magic that had been sleeping inside him. He moved faster than he ever had before. His sword blocked a strike that should have been impossible to stop. He countered with a technique he had practiced 1,000 times, and for the first time, it actually worked. His blade stopped an inch from Taewon's throat. The training grounds went silent. Every warrior stared. No recruit had ever touched the commander in their first 3 months. Taewon looked at the blade at his neck. Then slowly, something strange happened. He smiled. "Perhaps," the commander said quietly, "the king was right about you after all." It was not acceptance, not yet, but it was a beginning, and for Do-Hyun, that was enough. 6 months had passed since Do-Hyun arrived in the Dragon Kingdoms. He was no longer the broken wanderer who had stumbled into this world. His body had grown stronger. His movements had become sharper. The dragon magic in his scars now responded to his will, giving him speed and strength beyond any normal human. But he was still the weakest of the Young-Ho. He knew this. Everyone knew this. The other warriors had slowly begun to accept him. Not as an equal, but as someone who had earned a small measure of respect through pure effort. They no longer ignored him completely. Sometimes they nodded when he passed. Sometimes they offered advice after sparring sessions. It was not friendship, but it was progress. Commander Taewon had become harder on him, not easier. But Do-hyun understood why. The commander was trying to forge him into something stronger. Every harsh word, every brutal training session, every impossible demand was meant to push him beyond his limits. "A sword is shaped by fire and hammer," Taewon told him one evening. "You are the sword, I am the hammer. Do not break." Do-hyun did not break. He bent, he cracked, but he always straightened back up. The morning the attack came started like any other. Do-hyun was practicing his sword forms at dawn when the warning bells began to ring. The sound echoed across the entire kingdom, a deep, terrible tone that made his bones shake. Warriors began running. Yuna appeared at his side, her face pale. "The eastern barrier," she said quickly. "Something is coming through." Do-hyun grabbed his sword and followed the other Young-Ho toward the eastern edge of the kingdom. What he saw there made his blood run cold. The barrier was a wall of shimmering light that stretched as far as the eye could see. It protected the dragon kingdoms from the void, the dark space between worlds where terrible creatures lived. Nothing should have been able to pass through it, but something was passing through now. Black shapes were pushing against the light, tearing holes in it. They were shadow creatures, beings made of darkness and hunger. Do-hyun had heard stories about them, but the stories did not capture the horror. These things had no fixed form. They shifted and twisted like living nightmares. Mouths appeared and disappeared across their bodies. Eyes opened where eyes should not be. "Hold the line," Taewon commanded. His voice carried over the chaos. "Do not let them reach the inner kingdom." The Young-Ho formed a defensive wall. There were perhaps 50 of them against dozens of shadow creatures. Do-hyun took his place at the end of the line, next to a warrior named Jinwoo, who had once told him humans should not be allowed among dragons. Now facing the approaching darkness, Jinwoo simply nodded at him. "Stay close," Jinwoo said. "Watch my back. I will watch yours." The shadow creatures attacked. The battle was chaos. Do-hyun had trained for months, but nothing had prepared him for this. The shadow creatures did not fight like normal enemies. They had no patterns, no weaknesses he could see. His sword passed through them sometimes and struck solid flesh other times. He could not tell what was real and what was illusion. A creature lunged at him from the left. Do-hyun raised his sword, but he was too slow. A claw of shadow cut across his chest. The pain was unlike anything he had felt before. Not just physical, but something deeper, like the creature was trying to rip out his soul. His silver scars blazed with light. The dragon magic surged through him, pushing back the darkness, trying to invade his body. He screamed and drove his sword into the creature. It shrieked and dissolved into smoke. More creatures came. Do-hyun lost track of time. He fought beside Jinwoo, then beside other warriors he did not know. He saw Young-Ho fall and get dragged toward the barrier. He saw others rise up again despite terrible wounds. Commander Taewon was a monster on the battlefield. His dragon form emerged partially, scales covering his arms, claws replacing his fingers. He tore through shadow creatures like they were made of paper. But there were too many. For every creature they killed, 2 more pushed through the barrier. Then Do-hyun heard a sound that stopped his heart. Isol's voice screaming. He turned. One of the shadow creatures had somehow gotten past the defensive line. It was moving toward the palace, where the royal family was supposed to be protected. And standing in its path, frozen with fear, was Isol. She must have come to watch the battle. She must have wanted to see the warriors fight, and now she was alone, facing a nightmare creature 20 times her size. Do-hyun did not think. He ran. His legs moved faster than they ever had before. The dragon magic in his scars was not just glowing now. It was burning. Silver fire spread across his skin. Power he did not know he had flooded through every part of his body. The creature reached for Isul. Its clawed hand descended toward her small body. Doyun arrived in time. He threw himself between the creature and the princess, just like he had done in that ravine 6 months ago. The creature's claw slammed into him. He felt ribs crack. He felt blood fill his mouth. But he did not fall. He planted his feet and pushed back. Not her, he growled through the pain. Never her. His sword came up in a perfect arc, one of the forms Taewon had taught him. But it was different now. Silver fire ran along the blade. Dragon magic and human will combined into something new. The blade cut through the shadow creature like it was nothing. The thing screamed, a sound like breaking glass and dying stars. Then it exploded into dust. Doyun stood there swaying, his body covered in wounds and silver flame. Behind him, Isolde stared with wide golden eyes. "Do-hyun," she whispered, "you are glowing." He looked down at himself. She was right. The scars on his body were shining like captured starlight. The silver fire that had covered his sword now danced across his skin. More shadow creatures turned toward them. But before they could attack, Taewon was there. Then Jinwoo. Then a dozen other Yongho, forming a protective circle around Doyun and Isul. "Hold position," Taewon ordered. "Reinforcements are coming. We just need to survive until then." They held. It was the longest hour of Do-hyun's life. He fought until his arms felt like they would fall off. He protected Isul with everything he had. The other Yongho fought beside him, not as colleagues anymore, but as brothers. Finally, the sky split open. The Dragon King himself descended in his true form, a massive serpent of white and gold, scales shimmering with ancient power. His roar shook the mountains. His fire burned away the remaining shadow creatures in seconds. The holes in the barrier sealed behind him, closing with blinding light. The battle was over. Dawn was breaking. Real dawn, with golden light spreading across the purple sky. Doyun collapsed to his knees. His whole body was shaking. The silver fire had faded, leaving him feeling empty and exhausted. Isolde ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. "You saved me again," she said, crying. "You always save me." "I promised," Doyun managed to say. "I promised I would become a protector." Heavy footsteps approached. Commander Taewon stood over them, his armor covered in shadow dust and black blood. His stone face was unreadable. Then he did something he had never done before. He knelt down to Do-hyun's level. "You bled for us before you knew us," Taewon said quietly. "In that ravine, you threw away your life for a dragon child you had never met. You had no magic then, no training, no reason to fight." He reached out and placed his hand on Do-hyun's shoulder. "Now you fight as one of us. You stand with us. You protect what we protect." His voice grew rough. "I was wrong about you, Park Do-hyun. You are not weak. A weak man does not do what you have done. A weak man does not become what you have become." Other Yongho gathered around. Jinwoo, warriors whose names Do-hyun had never learned. They stood in a circle, looking down at him with different eyes than before. "Welcome, brother," Jinwoo said. "Welcome to the Yongho." One by one, the warriors raised their fists to their chests, the salute of the Dragon Kingdom's greatest protectors. Doyun looked up at them through exhausted, tear-filled eyes. 6 months ago, he had been nobody, a wandering mercenary with no home, no family, no purpose. He had walked through life like a ghost, haunted by old failures. Now he knelt in a magical kingdom, surrounded by legendary warriors who called him brother. A dragon princess clung to him like he was the most important person in the world. Commander Taewon, the man who had said he would fail, was welcoming him as an equal. Doyun thought about his sister, about the village that burned, about all the years he spent running from that pain. He was not running anymore. Slowly, painfully, he rose to his feet. He placed his fist against his chest, returning the salute. "I am honored," he said. "I will not fail you." Taewon nodded. Something like pride flickered in his steel eyes. "I know you will not." The sun rose higher over the dragon kingdoms. Doyun stood among the Yongho, Isul at his side, watching the light spread across this impossible, beautiful world. He had taken 5 blades for a dragon child, And in return, he had found something he never expected to find again: a home, a purpose, a family. The wanderer's journey was over. The protector's journey had just begun.